I'm Bree, and this is Makeup, Movies, and Stuff, where I do my makeup, talk about movies, and stuff. This is the one you've all been waiting for, all 13 of you, or most of you, at least 2 for sure. Today we're doing a deep dive into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you are new to this channel, I am doing a review of the movies that the metalcore band Ice Nine Kills does songs about, and I end the video with a rundown of the Ice Nine Kills song and how freaking great it is. But the focus is the movie itself, and I do a makeup look based on that movie while I talk. If you have not yet, I recommend you check out my other videos that I have. I've done one on A Nightmare on Elm Street, I did one on Friday the 13th, and I just put one out about Halloween. I say just, but I put that out in November and it's New Year's Eve now, and I wanted to take the holidays off because I had a lot of stuff going on. I was graduating from massage school. I put my cap in my tree. This one, though, today is on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which obviously, like all the other ones, it's a rated R horror movie, so there will be language and violence and lots of adult things talked about. And since I do a synopsis of the movie before we go into it, obviously there will be spoilers, so watch at your discretion. And now I present to you track 4 of the Silver Scream album, Savages, based on the 1974 Gorefest Texas Chainsaw Massacre, starring Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface, and written and directed by Toby Cooper. I'm thinking about doing a split face, regular Leatherface and Pretty Lady Leatherface, but I want to do the right, I want to make sure I do the right sides, like so I don't screw up like I did last time. If I do this eye, let's be this side. This lady. This side is the regular. It comes off really easy, so I'm not worried about it messing up the look, but that'll help me to figure out where what I'm putting where. Okay, also, I'm gonna kind of wing this synopsis. Usually I type one out while I watch the movie, but I didn't get to watch the movie before I started filming, and so I'm just gonna kind of wing this. So here we go. It's gonna be weird. Also, I'm using liquid latex for the first time. Let's hope I don't screw anything up with this. Okay. In 1973, one morning, the people of a small Texas county wake up to find that there has been like some grave robbery, mutilated bodies, and like monuments made out of them. Just some very disturbing stuff. You hear this all on a radio broadcast while there's some sound. I just assumed it was a camera going off. This but it's on the soundtrack. I don't know, maybe it's just an instrument and I wasn't aware of it, but yeah, no. So they find that stuff, and then I don't know, I want to say like the next day, probably, there's a group of five teenagers, people in their 20s, whatever, that are driving through this like nowhere part of Texas, and it's this couple and their friends Sally and Franklin, who's Sally's brother, and he is wheelchair bound. I mentioned that because he kind of seems like he gets ragged on a lot about it, and like his presence is annoying to the other people. I don't know. He seems like an inconvenience to them, which just seems really mean. They are driving through this nowhere place in Texas, and they pick up a hitchhiker because it's the 70s and, you know, no fear. We didn't have, I don't know, suspicion of strangers. I feel like that is far too low. Let's get that off so I don't injure my eye. Okay. This is actually not too bad to work with. I think I'll be using it to cover my eyebrows with the glue like I've been doing. Anyway, back to it. They pick up this hitchhiker who, shocker, is like batshit crazy. Well, first of all, Franklin has been talking about how their family like owned a slaughterhouse or was like part of the meat industry, something like that. This hitchhiker was like, oh yeah, my family is is part of the meat industry too. Basically, they used to slaughter animals, and now industrial like advances made their jobs obsolete. Basically, since machines can kill animals. Anyway, but he's like super creepy about it, of course. And then he like whips out a camera and he's taking pictures, or he takes a picture and then he's like demanding payment for it. And they're like, no, we're not gonna pay you for this the photo that you took. And he gets pissed off and he pulls a knife out, I think on Franklin. No, who does he pull a knife out on? Yeah, Franklin. And then when he can't get to Franklin because everybody else piles on him and like won't let him get him, he cuts himself in the hand, and they're like, okay, you're nuts, and they throw him out, and then he just smears blood on the side of the van. It's weird. So then they stop at this gas station, and oh yeah, I was like, why did they get stuck there? Because the guy at the gas station said there's no gas here, and they're so low they're basically like stuck there. So they decide they're gonna go explore this nearby house that Franklin and Sally's family own. It's just abandoned. And so they get there. Should be going down here too. Yeah. So they go investigate this house, right? The couple leave the rest to, you know, go have fun, sexy times. And they discover another house, and it's a little dilapidated, but it's running with gas-powered generators. The couple decides they're gonna go to the house and see if they can barter for some of their gasoline, since the gas station is out. They go up to the house, the guy does, and mind you, this movie's only been running for like, I would say like 5-10 minutes, not long at all. The guy goes into the house, and whoosh, all of a sudden, and there stands this hulking, horrible figure with a mask on and like a butcher's apron smock thing and this massive hammer, and just hauls out. I thought this was one of the most shocking moments in a horror movie ever, because like I said, it had just started. The only violence had been the crazy guy cutting his hand open, and all of a sudden this guy, Leatherface, takes this massive hammer and just smashes the kid in the head, and then he's convulsing and he like hits him in the head again and kills him. It was like, so like, oh, we're starting now, like the violence is starting now. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, so he kills him. So then the girlfriend follows into the house after him. They've already gone. Leatherface and Kirk is the guy's name. So Pam, the girl, she goes in, and it's this horrible collection of dead things and furniture made from dead things, and just this disgusting, morbid collection of dead things. Oh, I wonder if this has fumes. Yeah. I'm getting it in my eye. That'll be fine. Making a wide circle around it. So Leatherface grabs her and like hoists her up facing him, and spikes her back on a meat hook. Just like hangs her up there. And it's not just like a quick, like a, huh. He like puts her on there and like lowers her down onto it. Just agonizing. And then once he gets her on there, he takes a chainsaw and dismembers Herc. I can't say oh because I'm using the wrong hand. Why am I having so much trouble on this side? How many trouble on the other side? There. Just gotta play tricks with my brain again. Okay, so that's the couple dead. They're basically, they're gone. They're out. Sally and Franklin and their other friend, what's his name? What's his name? Jerry. It's Sally, Franklin, and Jerry left back hanging out at the van, waiting for them to come back. And like the sun is kind of starting to go down. They've been gone for a long time. Like, they've been gone long enough. They're teenagers. How long do they possibly need? Remember the Halloween video? Anyway, so he decides he's gonna go off and try and find the couple, Jerry is, leaving Sally and Franklin back there. Jerry finds the house then. He goes in and he starts exploring. He finds all the dead stuff, and then he finds Pam's body spasming, like pretty much dead, in like a meat locker, like a freezer that opens at the top. I think it's right at that moment he gets killed with a hammer too, just like Kirk did. But it wasn't, I don't remember it being like as graphic, or maybe I just had seen the other one and it didn't impact as much the second time, but I feel like it was like a lot the first time. Oh, that sound. I looked it up while I was off camera, and that sound that I was talking about, it was meant to mimic a flashbulb from a camera, like I thought, but it's actually just two piano strings being scraped together, basically. So that's what that noise is. So now it's just Sally and Franklin is like whining. I think he's like giving Sally crap. She's just frustrated because nobody's come back and it's like nightfall. Anyway, Sally's just kind of like ignoring him, and she grabs a flashlight and she's like we're gonna go find him. And they leave the van and start in the direction that everybody went, and they don't get quite to the house, and the man with the mask starts chasing them, just ambushes them with the chainsaw, and right as he ambushes them, he kills Franklin. He like I think it looks like he puts the chainsaw up his back and just kind of cuts him, but I'm not sure what my plan is with this. I think I just want to get some texture everywhere and something that I can like cut up. So the man with the mask and the chainsaw chases Sally toward the house. She gets in there and she sees like all the dead things. She sees this like rotting corpse and like this other rotting corpse, and she gets back outside, and then she goes back to the gas station. I can't remember why the van wasn't still at the gas station, because it wasn't. But anyway, she goes back to the guy who told him that he can't have any gas, and who seemed, like a friendly, kind of rednecky, nice guy. He takes her in and is like, there's nobody out there, it's fine. He gets her all, like, sedated for a second, and then beats the living hell out of her, and, like, puts her in a sack and puts her in his truck, and starts driving her. The whole time he's driving her, he's literally, like, taking a stick and, like, beating it into her, to make her make noise. Like, it's horrific. What was I saying? So he gets where he's going, and it is the house. The House of Horrors. Oh, I got latex in my hair. I'm sorry. Once he gets there, there is the hitchhiker from earlier, the nuts guy. The guy, like, gets really angry with him and starts beating on him for what he did in the cemetery. So he's, like, telling us, basically, that the cemetery job, the grave robbing and stuff, was the hitchhiker. So the hitchhiker is the grave robber, we find out. And then, like, Leatherface shows up, and the gas station guy, like, calls him his brother, the hitchhiker's brother. So they're Leatherface and the hitchhiker are brothers. And this is the first time we hear him called Leatherface, is when he's identified as the hitchhiker's brother. And he is dressed in women's clothing. And then one of the corpses that Sally found turned out not to be a corpse, and they call him Grandpa. They bring him down the stairs and cut Sally's finger and feed the blood to this Grandpa monster. And then Sally faints. And then she comes to, and she's at a dinner table with all of them, like all the freaks, including Grandpa. And I feel like I have to be really focused around my eye. It's gonna take a lot of latex. Good thing I got a lot of latex. So when she comes to, she's at this dinner table, and all the freaks are, like, arguing with each other about, like, just stupid shit, like the gas station owner not having the stomach to do the slaughtering part. I don't know, just, they're fucking crazy. And then they decide that they want to include Grandpa in torturing and killing the survivor, Sally. So they give him a hammer, and they want him to hammer her in the head. But his grip is so weak, he keeps dropping it into the bucket that's sitting over her hanging head. And it's just making this awful, just this pounding sound over and over and over again. It's a frantic scene, and then Sally breaks free. She gets chased out to the road. The hitchhiker gets hit by a truck, and then Leatherface is, like, trying to get her. The truck driver gets out and is, like, intervening. He's there trying to get in Leatherface's way. And then he attacks him with a wrench. He attacks Leatherface with a wrench and is able to get away. While that is going on, Sally flags down a pickup truck and hops in their back. And, like, as she's riding away, she's just laughing. What? Stupid. She gets in the pickup truck, and as they are riding away, she's just laughing hysterically. And then Leatherface is seen, and it's like, it's dawn now. And he's just, like, frantically, frustratedly waving the chainsaw around in the air with this, like, woman's face mask on. And it's this iconic shot that, like, if you know anything about horror, you've probably seen this image. And that's how it ends. So it only took me, like, an hour to get through the synopsis part. This is why I write them down. I need to remember to do that next time. But if a lot of that sounds cliche, that's actually because this is the one that started all of those tropes. This is written and directed by Toby Cooper. When he was writing it, it went through some different name changes, one of them being Head Cheese and another being Leatherface. Inspirations for Texas Chainsaw Massacre are pretty wild. Went on a journey finding out about these. Ugh. Well, first of all, when Toby Cooper was first starting out, he already had an idea for a story using elements of isolation, dark, and the woods, which they run through the woods, like, a lot. One of the inspirations was the violent press that was coming out about the Latino schools walkouts in 1973 in San Antonio. Also, the violent depictions of Vietnam in the media, where it's is a lack of sentimentality and the brutality of things led to his belief that man was the real monster here, only wearing a different face. So I put a literal mask on my film in my film, on the monster in my film. Another obvious inspiration is Ed Gein. Ed Gein. I think it's Ed Gein. I think the first time I read it, I thought that it was Ed Gein. It was pronounced that way, and then I just forgot which way was correct. Anyway, doesn't matter. His crimes took place in Wisconsin. Elements of his story, like his mother, dead mother being found preserved in his house, his dressing up like his mother, making furniture out of people dug out of graves. All elements that went into inspiration for not only the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but Psycho and Silence of the Lambs. Another serial killer attributed to this movie would be Elmer Wade Henley, and by extension Dean Corll, who Elmer with David Owen Brooks would recruit their own young man friends to come be victims for this Dean Corll, who only liked little boys. It's just horrible. It's a horrible, horrible story. I would love for Bailey Sarian to do a story on them. It's fascinating, and it was gruesome, and I was horrified by it, and I've read on a lot of serial killers, and this was truly, truly awful. I won't go into too much detail about them, but the quote from Kim Henkel, who helped write Texas Chainsaw Massacre, said, "I definitely studied Gein, but I also noticed a murder case in Houston at the time, a serial murderer you probably remember named Elmer Wayne Henley." I did not. He was a young man who recruited victims for an older homosexual man. I saw some news report where Elmer Wayne said, "I did these crimes, and I'm going to stand up and take it like a man." Well, that struck me as interesting. Called it conventional morality and moral schizophrenia, where it's like, well, I do these things, but now that I'm caught, I don't know. Knowing that you're doing wrong. Ugh. Trying to pull this latex out so it's loose around my eyes. I hope this turns out. This is going to be really cool if it does. The funniest story that I keep telling people since I've been researching this is that Tobe Hooper got the idea for using a chainsaw as a murder weapon when he was in a hardware store that was crowded and wanted to rush his way through the crowd. And I gotta say, that'll do it. I think I made the eye holes too wide, but I didn't want to get too close to my eye. There was some shady stuff going on with funding or the pay, but I couldn't really... As many times as I read the facts, I couldn't figure out what exactly they were doing, but I guess it didn't go over well how they were conducting business. I don't know how else to say that, I'm sorry. But, yeah, I don't know. Some weird stuff was going on with money. They had no money. They had an initial budget of $60,000, which they went over by either, depending on sources, could have been $93,000 or $300,000. Not over that. Not over $6,000 to that. You know what I mean. The casting was mostly local Texas unknowns. Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface. He was an Icelandic American actor, and he and Hooper decided that Leatherface would have some sort of intellectual disability and have never learned how to speak at all. In preparation for the role, Gunnar Hansen went to a special needs school to see how they moved and acted and reacted to things, which, I don't know. They used a certain camera that was already like old technology by the time they used it, but it required 4 times the amount of lighting of modern digital cameras. Getting a little braver with the latex. I think as long as I don't get it in my eye, should be fine. I've had liquid latex put on me several times, but I've never actually done it on myself or anyone else. So, hope this turns out. I feel like I'm going through a lot of it.
Deja vu, I just been in this place before. Higher on the street, and I know it's my time to go. Calling you, and the search is a mystery. Standing on my feet, it's so hard when I try to be me. Whoa, deja vu, I just been in this time before. Higher on the beat, and I know it's a place to go. Calling you, and the search is a mystery. Standing on my feet, it's so hard when I try to be me.
I'm sorry? I guess I'm gonna. I'm not on the clock, I don't. Sorry, I thought I would speed up that latex stuff, so you don't have to wait for me. I felt like it was taking longer to do it because I was talking like I'm doing right now. The location for their filming was a early 1900s farmhouse in Round Rock, Texas. Because they were afraid of rental costs for like equipment, they were so concerned about it that they were filming 7 days a week, 16 hours a day for a month. It got hot, peaking in July 26th at 110 degrees. And since they were working in a early 1920s farmhouse, they didn't have like ventilation or anything. No kind of cooling in this farmhouse. On top of that, the art director, Robert Burns, would go around and collect animal bones, animal corpses. They got animal blood from the local slaughterhouse. Just filled that whole place with rotting things, and then used latex for human looking skin on the upholstery. So you've got rotting things and hot latex. On top of that, even, Gunnar Hansen said that they never washed his costume because they were afraid it would discolor or get lost in the laundry, and they didn't have a backup costume. And like I said, Gunnar Hansen was Leatherface, so he also had the mask. At any point during the filming, it must have been disgusting. Like, I can't even imagine. That's just one of the stories of endurances that the cast and crew had to deal with. Was the heat and the smell. Marilyn Burns, who played Sally, in the scene where they cut her finger open to feed blood to Grandpa, they couldn't get the fake blood to come out of the piping, and instead of pumping it with their mouths like they did in Friday the 13th, they just decided that it wasn't gonna work and they were just gonna cut her fucking finger. So they cut her finger and actually bled it, Which, I know, like, worse things have happened on sets before, but just like a total disregard. I don't know. Anyway, in the scene where Kirk, remember the first guy who gets unalived, when he's on the table being dismembered by the chainsaw by Leatherface, he was told, don't move or you might really die, for one thing. And then Hansen got the chainsaw 3 inches from his face in the scene. Grandpa, in the scene where they're gonna kill Sally, has a real hammer, and granted the actor was aiming for the bucket and not the actor's head, which I would also like to note it's kind of obvious that he's aiming for the bucket and not the head, but whatever. It's still, I don't know, still a little bit dangerous. Hooper reported that everybody, cast and crew, had some kind of injury by the end of filming, and that, like, everybody was really pissed off at him. Which, I mean, I would be too. Went through a lot for this little indie film. The stating that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is true, based on a true story, which it does, is meant to represent the misinformation from the government that was going on at the time. You had Vietnam, Watergate, the 73 oil crisis all going on, and the government was just like trying to sweep it under the rug, which, doesn't sound familiar at all. I'm trying to kind of get these finished at the same time. I'd love that. On top of that, as previously stated, it was meant to emulate the graphic brutality of what the media was covering, like how it was covering it, which was epitomized by a scene of brains splattered on the streets. Which brings us back to that Hooper quote, "Man was the real monster here, just wearing a different face, so I put a literal mask on the monster in my film." The movie itself is considered cheap and grubby and out of control. It's like a Greek tragedy in that there's no on-screen violence. It speaks to the same sort of issues that Psycho and The Birds touch on, which is like American civilization and like the delegitimization of authority without giving any comforting closure. The family, as I said in the synopsis, they lost their jobs because of like factory industrialization taking over their jobs. It's not that far from reality. It displays what they call cannibalistic capitalism, which, so there was this guy in Germany who had all these cannibalistic crimes and was like selling human meat, blah blah blah, like it was really happening, and the media it was in Russia, not Germany, but the media in Russia, no, it was Germany, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter. Their media was saying, look, this is a sign of the times. We've got people eating each other because of how bad times are, sort of thing. I don't know how else to describe it. Let's get some grubby rounds. It also... Sorry, I lost track of what it is. Oh, it also kind of... I feel like this isn't working. Let's keep going. It also plays with the Georges Bataille... Well, I don't do French. I'll put the name up. His idea of taboo and transgression. Like, there can't be transgression without the taboo, and vice versa. So, like, if you get rid of the taboo of, like, eating somebody, or, using their body for decoration or upholstery like we do other animals, then what's stopping you from doing those things? And on the other side of that, where's the fun of doing it if it's not exciting in being like taboo? So do they understand what they're doing? Yes. Does that change anything? No. Their version of family is like a mockery of American life. It's like a perversion. Just trying to... Where was I going next? The like family dinner scene is like funny and horrible, with the funny feeding off the horrible and vice versa, as it's supposed to be like a mockery of like a sitcom, family sitcom dinner. Leatherface has become an iconic killer with a mask and a weapon, and he's really the one that started it all. Before there was Freddy and his claws, Jason and his machete, Michael and his knife. There was Leatherface and his chainsaw. He's the one that started the big hulking figure trope. He's the one that had an iconic weapon that wasn't the traditional like gun, impersonal weapon. A vindictive kind of way to kill people. I'm not crazy, you're crazy. I just got black up my nose. What are you doing? Okay. There's a kind of a debate on violence against women in, well, slasher movies, but specifically this one, since it kind of started everything. It does introduce the final girl trope. And there's, again, that weird ratio of, time spent focusing on guys' deaths versus chicks. Because, again, you've got the guys that are dying, like, with the stroke of a hammer, and women who are put up on meat hooks. Like, it's very different ways to die. There's a evilness to it. There's a twisted sensuality to it. It's one of those things where you, as a horror fan, you go, why am I enjoying this? And that's kind of why you enjoy it, is because it doesn't make sense for you to be relating to this taboo. Not to get like Freudian on people or anything, but that's basic idea. This is also, per Hooper's words, a movie about meat. It's considered the ultimate pro-vegetarian movie because of its themes in animal rights. Tobe Hooper said, yeah, this is a film about meat. And he gave up meat while he was filming it because it bothered him. And even writer-director Guillermo del Toro became a vegetarian for a time after first viewing the film, which I find interesting. I love Guillermo del Toro. I know that Rob Zombie is a vegetarian, vegan, maybe, I'm not sure. And I wonder about whether or not it had anything to do with this film in particular. Yeah, I don't know, but I would not be surprised to find out that that's why. Oh, I need the light. Where's my light? Oh, there it is. The white bag. Take this and powder half my face white. This half. It premiered in Austin October 1st, 1974, which was a whole year after it had finished being filmed, which, I mean, happens with indie films because it takes a long time to get a project finished. Anyway, but upon its release, I've never seen as much controversy surrounding a mainstream film in its release. Like, it's pretty impressive how much this bothered people. Its use of the fairly new idea of releasing it as based on a true story drew quite a large audience comparatively for a horror film. It ran in first run theaters for 8 years annually. First run theaters are like, they get the blockbusters like before the rest of the theaters do. It ended up being the 12th highest grossing film in 1974, which I was like, okay, 12th out of what? Like, how many films came out in 74? Well, a lot. It was up against Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, and Chinatown, which are all great classics. Also, Phantom of the Paradise, which is like a Phantom of the Opera Faust musical that I've always wanted to see. It's got, what's his name in it? Anyway, that came out that year. The Godfather 2 was released that year. The Great Gatsby, which has Karen Allen in it from Indiana Jones. Earthquake, which was made into a very popular attraction at Universal Studios. Andy Warhol's Blood for Dracula. Black Christmas, which is one of the inspirations, allegedly, for Halloween, which took most of its inspiration from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But then Halloween overtook it in highest grossing independent horror film in 78. Hooper was hoping for, honestly, a PG rating for his uncut film, which I'm not sure in what world that makes sense. He ended up getting an X rating above R for the uncut film. Once they had cut several minutes from the film, then they were finally able to make it an R. There, let me get that hair out of the way. There were walkouts in theaters across the country, police intervention in some places, and they even tried to take it out of theaters on morality charges. It was totally banned in Britain, and at the time that the ban was in force, you were not allowed to use chainsaw in your title, which made a lot of copycats have to change the titles of their films. And I found it interesting. It's not chainsaw, even though in promotional materials it shows it's one word, chainsaw, but it's actually 2 words, chain and saw. Let's get some gray. It was also banned in Australia, as well as Brazil, Chile, Finland, France, Iceland, Ireland, Norway, Singapore, and Germany. And in Sweden, it was known as a video nasty, which is like the 70s version of a penny dreadful, which were pamphlets that were given out in Victorian times that told horrible stories, and like Sweeney Todd is based on a penny dreadful story. Keep messing up. Dang it, I'm almost done. It came out to honestly really mixed reviews. Shockingly so. Like, some people really hated it, as they do with horror films a lot, calling it plastic, extreme, unimaginative, versus other critics like Roger Ebert, who we've talked about before, saying that it is one of the most important horror films like since Night of the Living Dead, in league with Last House on the Left. Some critics say it's a punishing assault on the senses, but it's also at the same time has an intelligent, bloodless depiction of gore. So it really does just hammer on you, but you realize you don't actually see any of the gore of the violence. It's based out of reality. It has a lot of realism that makes it terrifying. Better. There we go. Okay. It interestingly uses very effectively daylight shots, which is hard to do in horror, and even its movies that were inspired by it, they don't often use the daylight shots. What was I doing? The radio broadcasts, like this one, at the very beginning, talking about all the different murders and grave robbings and things like that, lend to the realism of it. There are a lot of scenes like the dinner table one where Grandpa is dropping the hammer are so frantic, they're like sensory overload. It has been considered possibly the scariest movie ever made because of all of that. Wes Craven basically said whoever made this movie must have been a, quote, Mansonite crazoid, in reference to Charles Manson and his family group. Just trying to get these eyebrows nice and fluffy and terrible and dark. Pull them through the latex. Stephen King has heralded it as a masterpiece. It has an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's been a major influence on slashers, obviously. It's considered a work of art. It's dirty, it's rough, it's insane. Instead of aberrant sexuality, it's just total insanity. Leatherface with his mask and his chainsaw are iconic now. The Evil Dead and the Blair Witch were inspired by it. Wes Craven said that The Hills Have Eyes is a tribute to it, which you can really tell it's very similar in the way it feels. In fact, when I was guessing which movies the Ice Nine Kills songs were based on, when my sister first introduced them to me, I thought that this song was actually The Hills Have Eyes for a second. That's how similar they are. Let's get a little bit of this blue. There we go. Get some of that blue. Ridley Scott's Alien, Scott has said, is influenced by Texas Chainsaw Massacre. All of Rob Zombie's crazy shit, which also definitely has the same feel of the redneck family from hell kind of thing. And it was inducted into the Horror Hall of Fame in 1990. In 1982, there was an Atari 2600 game that was released where you played as Leatherface and you were doing the killing. Because of its excessive violence, because it was very similar to the movie, lots of game shops refused to stock it. I'm not doing well with this lipstick. I wonder if I should paint it on. I'm going to try and paint it on. There have been 8 other films, including sequels, prequels, and remakes. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was considerably more violent and gory. It was banned in Australia for 20 years. And then Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, was made without Hooper because he had a conflicting schedule with the movie he was making called Spontaneous Combustion. It's like a really weird fire starter with Brad Dourif as the main character. So yeah, Brad Dourif, woo! Who is Chucky, obviously, and Wormtongue. It also has Melinda Dillon, who is the mom from A Christmas Story. It's weird how often A Christmas Story comes up in this series. Anyway, and also John Landis. Anyway, Never seen it. Maybe will someday. I don't know that I'm gonna get these lips right. That's fine. I have done my best. Be satisfied. And then there was the next Netflix movie that was released February 18th of 2022, which we are saying goodbye to today. And now for the Iceman Kills bit. So the lyrics are: we are the savages, eating you alive, the original villains in the night, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. We are the savages, we are the savages. Out on the cringe of societies where we lie, because we're lethal liabilities till we die. Won't heed the call of the law, won't follow the pack, because the sound of the saw is our soundtrack. Hey, hey, hey. This is our battle call. Mess with the horns and you get the devil. Hey, hey, hey. You're not invisible. Mess with the horns and you get the devil. And then it's the chorus again. Out on the cringe of societies where we lie, we're lethal liabilities till we die. Stay on your side of the tracks if you know what's good, because you won't make it out of our neighborhood. And then the bridge, and then the chorus, and then the chorus, and then the chorus, and then the bridge again. So it's very simple compared to a lot of their other songs, but I think that also kind of lends to it being Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because there's no real like method to the madness, it's just madness. But the breakdown, it starts with the photo noise, the piano strings, that sound. The word savages, it invokes that primal rage and fear, eating you alive, literally eating them. They were butchering them for meat, and it comes a lot clearer that that's what they're doing in a lot of the sequels. Like the gas station dude wins a chili off in one of them because he knows quality meat. It's a terrible joke, but that's all like that. The original villains in the night, they're out on the cringe of society. It's that taboo and transgression idea of nasty habits, like the Oingo Boingo song. The call of the law. In a lot of the sequels, the law is involved. They are part of the whole trap. The sound of the saw is our soundtrack. In another one of the sequels, Leatherface is presented with a golden chainsaw, if I read this correctly, and it said on it something like, we heed the call of the chainsaw, you know, like something weird like that. Stay on your side of the tracks if you know it's good. It's always, you know, it's this backwoods area that these people get stuck on. Horns for, you know, animal deaths, and devil, they're like from hell. I thought it was interesting to say you're not invincible, because obviously you're not invincible, but if you think about it, like, it happens so quickly and so easily, all of these deaths, that your security and like, in your mortality, it wavers when you see things like that. I think I am done. I did the best I could. My first time with the liquid latex. I hope you like it. And that's all I have for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I will see you next time, but I gotta go. I have to return some videotapes.
Deja vu, I just been in this place before.